It is a Wednesday morning in Phoenix, Arizona, and Diane is sitting in the break room at work scrolling through her phone while her coffee cools. She has been a marketing coordinator at a mid-sized company for 6 years. Good reviews every year, a raise last cycle of 3.2%. Nothing dramatic, nothing to complain about. She is not worried about her job. Her company just rolled out an AI platform that handles the routine reporting, ad copy variations, and basic attribution analysis her department used to produce manually. Diane has been told this makes everyone more productive. She has been told this is good news. What Diane has not been told, and what her company's leadership understands but has not communicated, is what happened to her leverage as an employee the moment that AI platform went live. Before the platform, if Diane wanted a meaningful raise, her manager had to weigh the cost of replacing her against the cost of meeting her request. Finding, hiring, and training someone to do what Diane does takes months and costs real money. That friction was always on Diane's side of the negotiation. After the platform, Diane's manager has a different calculation. The AI handles the routine pieces. Diane is still needed, but for a narrower slice of the job. And that narrower slice means that replacing her, if she pushes too hard on compensation, has become a lighter lift than it was before. Diane did not lose her job, she lost her negotiating leverage, and her paycheck, while not declining in absolute terms, is now growing more slowly than it would have been in a world without AI. This is not a theory. This is freshly published research from one of the most respected economic research organizations in America. Apollo Global Management analyzed Bureau of Labor Statistics data from 2015 through 2025 and compared wage and employment changes in jobs highly exposed to AI against those less exposed. What they found should be on the front page of every newspaper in the country. Workers in high AI exposure occupations saw real wage growth slow by 6.7 percentage points relative to less exposed workers after 2023, with no statistically significant decline in employment. The jobs are still there, the paychecks are getting smaller in real terms, and the lowest paid workers are getting hit the hardest. The lowest wage quartile saw a 10.7-point decline in real wage growth. The second quartile fell 5.4 points. The highest paid workers showed no significant effect. From 2022 to 2024, real wages fell 6.1% for computer programmers, 5.4% for statistical assistants, and 2.9% for software quality assurance analysts. These are not manual laborers or workers without education. These are college-educated mid-career professionals whose wages are declining in real terms, while the companies they work for use AI to capture productivity gains that used to belong to workers in the form of raises. Apollo's chief economist described what's happening in plain language. Companies are capturing AI productivity gains through wage compression rather than workforce reduction. The workers seem to know it. A June 2026 survey of 1,005 employed U.S. workers found that 29% admitted to actively sabotaging their employer's AI rollout. That is not laziness or resistance to change. That is workers who understand, at a gut level, that this technology is making them poorer and responding the only way they feel they can. NEBR projects roughly 502,000 AI-related job cuts in 2026, 9 times the number attributed to AI in all of 2025. The paycheck compression Diane is experiencing today is the early wave of something much larger heading toward American workers, and the only defense against it is not political, it is financial. It is strategic, and it is available to anyone willing to act before the full wave arrives.
If you're new here, hit that subscribe button right now, because every week we bring you exactly this kind of content, real, current, and built to help you make better decisions with your money. To understand why AI is making most workers poorer, not by eliminating their jobs, but by compressing their wages, you need to understand the economic relationship between worker leverage and compensation. Throughout most of American economic history, workers maintained leverage in wage negotiations through a simple mechanism: the cost and difficulty of replacing them. The more specialized your skills, the more it cost your employer to find and train someone else, and the more you could reasonably ask for in compensation. That replacement friction was the invisible engine behind most American wage growth. AI has begun systematically reducing that friction, not by taking jobs in the dramatic, headline-grabbing way that makes for an easy story, but by making workers in AI-exposed roles incrementally more replaceable. When an AI platform handles the routine cognitive work that used to occupy 30% of Diane's time, her manager's calculation shifts. She is still needed, but for less of the full job, and that reduction in how much of her role is unique and difficult to replace translates directly into reduced leverage in compensation discussions. Forbes published a landmark piece on August 5, 2026, just days ago, titled "Why AI Will Cut Your Pay Before It Takes Your Job." The research it summarized showed that starting wages at AI-exposed companies fell 4.5% after ChatGPT's launch, with junior and mid-level pay declining while senior compensation remained stable. The pattern is consistent and specific. AI hits the middle first, hardest, and earliest. Entry and mid-level roles in AI-exposed fields are experiencing wage compression right now. Senior roles, which require the kind of complex judgment, stakeholder management, and accountability that AI cannot replicate, are holding, which means the career path that previously led from entry-level through middle management into senior compensation has a new tax built into it. Every year spent in the middle layers of an AI-exposed field is a year where your wage growth is being systematically suppressed by a force that your employer is benefiting from and your paycheck is not. And here's the thing that makes this particularly difficult to see from inside it. The paycheck is still arriving. The job is still there. There is no single dramatic event that tells you something is wrong. The compression happens slowly, in percentage points of foregone growth, measured against what your wages would have been in a world without AI, a counterfactual you can never directly observe. Diane does not feel poorer today than she did last year, but she is building wealth more slowly than she was on track to build it. And in 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, the compounding effect of slower wage growth shows up as a gap between the financial life she expected and the one she actually has.
Now let's get specific about which workers are most at risk and why, because the research on this is precise enough to be genuinely useful for anyone who wants to assess their own exposure and act before the full wave arrives at their specific role. The workers facing the highest wage compression risk share a specific occupational profile. They work in roles that involve routine cognitive tasks, standardized reporting, first-pass analysis, basic content generation, data entry, customer communication following structured scripts, and rule-based decision-making. These are exactly the tasks that current generation AI handles most competently. They are also the tasks that historically occupied a significant percentage of white-collar work in American companies. The occupations already showing measurable wage declines from AI exposure include computer programmers, data entry clerks, statistical assistants, software quality assurance analysts, customer service representatives, content writers, and basic financial analysts. These are not fringe roles. They represent tens of millions of American jobs held by people with college degrees, with career plans, with mortgages and families, and the entirely reasonable assumption that their skills would continue to be rewarded by the labor market the way they always had been. The workers showing the least wage compression are in roles that share the opposite profile. They involve complex human judgment in unpredictable situations, sustained relational accountability, being the person who owns the outcome in a client's eyes, creative synthesis across multiple domains rather than optimization within a single domain, physical presence in variable real-world environments, and the kind of contextual wisdom that comes from lived experience and cannot be extracted from training data. Senior strategists, licensed tradespeople, therapists, high-stakes advisors, experienced sales professionals, and complex project leaders are showing the least wage pressure from AI exposure. Now, here is the behavioral reality that is keeping most people stuck in the at-risk category, even when they can see the data. Psychologists call it identity-based resistance, the deep discomfort of changing your professional identity in response to external pressure.
Diane has been a marketing coordinator for 6 years. That role is part of how she thinks of herself professionally. The idea of repositioning, of deliberately developing skills in a different direction, of having a different conversation with her manager about her role, of moving into different work that is less AI exposed, feels like giving something up rather than gaining something. The research on this is consistent. Workers in AI-exposed roles who understand their exposure and still fail to adapt are typically not doing so because they lack the capacity. They are doing so because the adaptation feels like an admission that something they built their professional identity around is becoming less valuable, and that psychological cost is real, even when the financial cost of not adapting is larger. The June 2026 survey that found 29% of workers sabotaging their company's AI rollout is a data point about this dynamic. Sabotage is the emotionally available response when the psychologically unavailable response, reorienting your skills and positioning yourself on the right side of the technology, feels like an impossible ask in the middle of a busy working life with bills and responsibilities and no clear roadmap for what the transition actually looks like.
Here is the part that turns understanding into action, because every piece of research covered in this video is only useful if it produces a change in what you do this week, this month, and this year. The financial defense against AI-driven wage compression is not complicated. It runs on 2 parallel tracks simultaneously, one inside your career and one inside your personal finances, and both tracks need to be moving at the same time. Career Track Move 1. Conduct an honest exposure assessment of your current role this week. Look at your actual daily and weekly tasks. Which of them involve routine cognitive work that current AI tools can already handle competently? Standardized reports, templated communications, basic data analysis, content generation following a defined format. What percentage of your total work time do those tasks represent? If the answer is above 40%, your role sits in the high exposure zone that the Apollo research identifies as the wage compression target. Knowing this is not a reason to panic. It is a reason to act before the compression fully arrives at your specific position. Career Track Move 2. Deliberately move toward the parts of your role that require human judgment, relational accountability, and complex contextual decision-making. This does not necessarily mean changing jobs. It often means having a direct conversation with your manager about taking on more of the work that AI cannot do: client-facing responsibility, strategic input, stakeholder management, while using AI tools to handle the routine parts faster. Workers who position themselves as the human layer on top of AI, rather than the human being replaced by AI, are in the strongest possible position in the current labor market. They are more productive because of the tools, not threatened by them, and they carry clear leverage because their contribution is the judgment and accountability that AI cannot provide. Career Track Move 3. Use any income you are currently earning before wage compression reduces it to build investment-based income that does not depend on what any employer decides to pay you. A Roth IRA funded with S&P 500 index fund contributions does not have an AI exposure problem. The dividend income from a growing investment portfolio does not shrink because a company deployed an AI platform. Rental income from a well-selected property does not get compressed because the labor market shifted. Building investment income in parallel with employment income is not a backup plan. In the current AI economy, it is a primary strategy, because the only guaranteed way to stop being vulnerable to AI wage compression is to build income streams that AI cannot compress. Personal Finance Move 1. Audit your current savings rate immediately and set a target of directing at least 15 to 20% of every paycheck to investment accounts before lifestyle spending claims it. The Roth IRA 2026 annual limit is $7,000. The 401k contribution limit is $23,500. These accounts are the financial infrastructure that makes a compressed paycheck survivable and a compressed career transition navigable.
Diane, after reading the Apollo research that went viral in her professional network, did 3 things the following week. She requested a meeting with her manager to discuss expanding her role toward client strategy work. She increased her 401k contribution from 5% to 12%, and she opened a Roth IRA for the first time and funded it with $1,500, the first month's contribution toward maxing it for the year. She did not wait for the compression to become visible in her paycheck. She acted while her earnings were still strong enough to fund the transition. That timing is everything. The research is clear. The mechanism is documented. The only question is whether you act before the wave reaches your specific shore or after. That's it for today's video. If this gave you an honest picture of what AI is doing to wages right now, not in theory, but in documented, published research from this week, hit that like button and subscribe. Drop a comment and tell me, do you think your current role is in the high exposure or low exposure category?